Welcome to the Midnight Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Easton Bennett, alongside my fellow co-host, Tyler Sinden. We are both entrepreneurs who are learning, growing, and building our own businesses, and our goal is to share our experiences and knowledge to help you grow and become a successful entrepreneur. Strap in. I kind of like reading the intro every week.
Do you?
Yeah, because like you see a lot of podcasts. You see a lot of podcasts, it's like they just play it over the beginning, like the same one, but get a couple different tone inflections when you read it every week.
Yeah, I like this. It's more authentic. And I feel like I skip past a lot of intros too, so this is a little bit different. Maybe like every now and then just throw in some Easter eggs or, just some hidden things.
Something random. Just something random in the middle. It has nothing to do with business. Got a little bit of a different look here today. I wonder if you can tell on camera since the iPad is right next to the camera instead of looking at my computer, but we'll see if anybody notices. Shouldn't be too big of a difference. How you been, Tyler? What's new?
I've been doing pretty good, and I was thinking the other day that we've been slacking a little bit. We haven't been bringing quotes to the podcast.
Oh, I gotta start reading some more books. I'm all out of my quotes. I burned through them in the first 2 episodes.
Yeah, so I want. Do you mind if I go on a little story here? I helped out my grandma the other day, and it just got me thinking, and this might sound stupid, but I was like proud of myself for what I did, because not that I wouldn't help her out. I'm obviously going to help her out. But what happened was I've done this in the past where she asked me to help out with, cutting her or trimming her trees. And, I'd rather not do it, but it's obviously for my grandma. But what I really like about what I brought to the table was in the past, I would always come shitty attitude, wouldn't really like doing it, maybe half-ass it. And, I just want to get in and out and just, shitty job type of deal and not bring a positive attitude. That was me in the past. This past weekend when I went there, I'm really happy with myself. Yeah, exactly. So I was just thinking, like, I went there, I'm going to go there, I'm going to do a good job. I'm here, might as well just do the best I can, bring a positive attitude. And, it's something that I don't want to do, but it's for my grandma, got to help her out. And trying to bring this full circle, the quote, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So I'm just happy with myself. It was a quote story.
Yeah. Okay, I was like, where's the story going? Like, where did this stem from? But yeah, it stemmed from the quotes. I was trying to find a quote earlier when I texted you, and I said, sometimes you got to throw in the towel, but I think there's a saying or something where it's like, sometimes you have to know when to kill something or another. And I could not figure it out, and I was Googling it, and I still can't figure it out. But if I do think of it, we're going to...
I think there's a song, something similar to that.
Yeah, I saw some country song pop up.
Yeah, it's like, you got to know when to hold.
Yeah, that's Kenny Rogers.
Yeah, that's completely off.
I do like that song, though. That's a good song. Yeah. Other than that, what else have you been up to? Anything? Nothing new? Nothing crazy over the last week? I guess it's been... When was the last episode we filmed? We're on kind of a weird schedule here.
Yeah, it was a couple days ago. Nothing too crazy. I need to start buckling down and actually doing shit. I've been putting stuff off, but I've been doing other stuff. And, it comes back to prioritization and figuring out what I need to focus my efforts on and what not to focus my efforts on. And... constantly working on that. But yeah, I just need to get better at that and prioritize better a little bit, I think. So nothing too much. What about you?
I've actually been thinking over the weekend, and a lot of the times I have this problem where it's like, I look at the long-term goal, whether it be a year or even, a month down the road, and it almost overwhelms me into thinking, I have so much to do, or, I have to be at this goal by a certain time. So I've really been focusing on, like, the past week or so, just getting the daily things done that I need to know that I know need to be done. And I started doing this brain dump worksheet. I know I posted on my Instagram story, but it's helped a ton, and just kind of pretty much everything that's on my mind about business or whatever it is, I write on the sheet. And then just looking at that sheet throughout the day really kind of has been helping me get through the day. This kind of sounds like sad, like I'm just like, I can't get through the day, but it's really just like prioritizing my tasks, kind of like you said, prioritizing what I'm focusing on. And that's been helping a lot lately because, wow, I'm just struggling with my words. That's been helping a lot lately because before that, I was like all over the map. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to have this done, and that has to be done by January. And I'm like, why don't you just do whatever you're going to do that day, put one foot in front of the other, and then kind of been working on that. But that's pretty much all I'd say.
Yeah, it's like that volume where you got to be putting in all those little tasks that you might not see pay off, but it's like repetitions. You're getting that repetitions in and you're just improving yourself. But I don't know if you do care, but do you mind sharing any of your goals that you're currently working towards?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of them down the road. So like most of them are not personal goals, but like business goals that don't relate to a specific client or anything. So, and they're not like goals that have a hard number to them. Like I want to get to X amount of whatever, but just things I want to start doing better. So at the beginning of the year, I was reading a lot of books and I haven't read a lot of books lately. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm way behind. I was going to read 18 books this year. I'm like, okay, I'm way behind. I got to catch up and read however many books. But now it's just like, okay, how about I just start reading every day again? So that's been one of them. Another goal, I guess you could say, is to kind of just get back on the personal content train. So specifically YouTube videos and just posting when I feel like posting. So a lot of the times, like we were talking about earlier, when you sent a clip from this podcast and I posted on my personal, it's like, why don't you just post that clip? You never know where that clip's going to go. So those are the two main ones. Get back to reading and actually going to sleep at midnight. That's my other one. Instead of like 4 a.m.
Yeah. I sometimes am waiting for you to text back in the morning and it's like all of a sudden it's like not midnight, it's noon.
Yeah.
It's like, man, this guy slept in. But I think one thing that I learned from reading nonstop is it's okay to not read, because you can read all the books in the world, but if you don't apply what you're reading, what's the point, you know?
And that's kind of what I was thinking. There's a point of overconsumption. I was actually thinking about that before we hit record.
Yeah. I think action's more important than reading, but at the same time reading is action. But I think applying what you read, or just, you know, if you're doing stuff, I think it's beneficial. But if you're cutting out that screen time on your phone, it's obviously better to read.
Yeah, and that's where it's almost to keep your mind sharp. Just, okay, I'm not going to rip through 4 books this week, but if I read 2 chapters on this branding book, maybe I'll pick up something, and it's actually just to keep you thinking about business, if that makes sense.
Sharpen the saw.
Yeah, sharpen the saw. I like that. Did you read that in a book?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I did. You're like, these are no original quotes on this.
That's on this 7 podcast. Habits of Highly Effective People.
I watched this show, actually. It kind of goes back to a business book, and it's called Sprung. Greg Garcia, he's a director that I actually tweeted at him. He replied, so that was kind of cool. But he's a director, and this show is about these ex-convicts that get let out of prison. And the one guy was learning in prison how to do all these cons outside of prison, and one of the books he was reading was Start With Why. And I was like, no way, I've read that book before. So he read that, and then How to Convince People. I can't remember what the name of it is.
How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah, that one. So he was influencing people on the outside to kind of go along with his plan. But I was like, see, even prisoners read.
I wonder if that's the same guy that was just on Andy Frisella's podcast, because that guy was in prison and I don't know how, but he said he's like got connections and he was creating content while he was in jail, and he's been like preparing himself while in jail. And then once he got out, that time in prison, he prepared himself for outside of the world, and now he's just, taking over.
That's kind of sick. It's definitely not the same guy, because this guy was an actor that was just playing a character that was in prison, but
completely different. Okay. Yeah.
But other than that, that's nothing really new with me. Just kind of trudging along, doing the everyday tasks, and see where life takes me. I want to focus, actually lately I've been focusing a lot more on client work, getting the projects that are in the queue just complete. So like the next 2 weeks is a 2-week sprint to just finish everything. And then it's almost like a clean slate that I can start with, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Because I hate being backed up. It's literally the worst feeling ever.
Yeah.
I
feel like you don't feel I feel like you don't feel as overwhelmed when you don't have that huge list of tasks that you got to do, and like when you have nothing there, especially like when something does come in. I was a big procrastinator in college, but I realized that it's not procrastination. It's just you don't do what you don't like to do.
Yeah.
Whereas if you do have stuff that, like, say I have a school project that's due tomorrow night or something, and then I get like a video that I get to work on.
Yeah.
That's no real due date on it, maybe 2 weeks. I'm probably going to do the video first because that's what I enjoy doing. So it's just, you're just pushing off what you don't like to do. And yeah.
Oh yeah, I get that 100% all the time. That's why I'm like, hey, if a client's like, how long is it gonna take to do the video? I'm like, 2 to 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks. It's gonna get started like 3 days before, I promise you. Unless like it's a video I'm excited about. Like that's only some videos. Like I was talking to you today, I was editing this video and it took like pretty much a majority of the day, and it was just very graphic, intensive, and I'm like, this is so boring. I hate it. So many keyframes, so many stupid little. But, you know,
intricacies.
It pays the bills. It pays the bills. And that's a fantastic transition into today's topic, I think.
That's a wonderful transition.
Not paying the bills. That's not our topic, but I'm sure you guys have seen the title. We are going to be talking about, I guess we don't really have a title for the episode yet, but we're just going to be talking about finances in general. So how to get money to start your business, what you should do with money when it comes into the business. So any income you get, where to allocate your expenses, kind of go over all of that. So I think just to start this off, it might be a good idea just kind of talk about how we started our two businesses and where that money came from, and then we can kind of dive into that. Thoughts, comments, concerns?
I like it.
You want to go for you? Should we play rock, paper, scissors for who goes first?
No, you can go.
Okay.
Actually,
so
I'll go.
Yeah,
Never mind. You go.
No, actually, mine's shorter. Mine's shorter. So I'll go because
okay. That's what she said.
You exact to me. But so mine it's not super in depth. Pretty much how I started the business was I think I put $1,000 into a bank account, and I might have talked about this on a previous episode, but I put $1,000 in a bank account, and that's pretty much what I started the company with. So when I was starting, I had the fees, I guess you can call them, to start up a business. I had the LLC fee, and then there's a couple other government things that I had to fill out, and that was like $30, $20, $35. And then $1,000 into the bank account. And I just ran the business off of that. So that's pretty much how I started my company. As far as how I got that $1,000, I'm pretty sure I just saved it from
streets.
Yeah, just living. I'm a young entrepreneur. I just saved it from, I don't know, my previous job or whatever. And $1,000, it's a lot in some terms, but you know, if you want to start a business and you can do it with $1,000, that's pretty cheap. So that's kind of how I got started. $1,000, ran with it from there. Tyler, how did you get started? I know you were in it a little bit more than $1,000.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It depends on what you're talking about, but I feel like it just stems back from me just being decent with money, and I typically don't buy stuff unless I absolutely need it.
Yeah.
So I typically do have some money like there or saved up. And I think the first one that wasn't really a business, but I did do a little bit of it, was the videos. Mm-hmm. And that just started with me having that extra money because I didn't have, or I don't spend money. So I basically just bought a camera. My roommate and I were like, let's start a podcast. We both bought cameras, didn't use them at all. But then later down the road, I ended up using that camera because my roommate knows that I like video. I'm good at editing. He worked at a supplement store, helped them out a little bit, did some other projects there. So I think it was just having money saved up. And then moving on to the other business that I started with my buddy, it was a lot of the same premise where we just kind of had this money available, and it's also we're working our day jobs to fund it. So we did the upfront cost, did a lot of maybe we didn't take the best approach, but we paid a lot in the product, and now we got inventory, and then we just used our money from our day jobs and whatever money that we had saved up, and then we used that money for any funding, just getting the business launched, any business expenses that we incurred. And then we started running ads, and then we were basically the ads were not profitable. We had a terrible ROAS, return on ad spend. And exactly. We were just basically giving money to Facebook, and we were like, okay. And basically all that money was coming from our day jobs, and we're like, okay, this isn't working. We got to figure out something new. So it's basically been a mix of me saving and just having that money there available, and also for my day jobs.
I want to go back to the beginning a little bit now, because a lot of people, when they're deciding if they're going to, I always say a lot of people, whether, and I have no stats on if a lot of people do this, but I assume a majority of the people,
More than one.
when they're thinking about starting a business, you have to have in your mind ahead of time, in my personal opinion, that you're going to put some money somewhere so you can actually take on this new adventure. I think a lot of people, and a lot of people that I know, they don't live check to check, but if they get paid a certain amount of money, they're not saving a lot of that money for something they want to do. They know, okay, well, I have a job. I'm going to go to a job tomorrow. You know, you obviously can get fired, but let's say I get paid this amount of money. Let's say I get paid $1,000 of disposable income after that. Well, I can spend $800 doing what I want, going golfing and that stuff. But if you spend $500 and then you put the other $500 into an account to, okay, eventually one day I want to start this thing. I think if you think ahead a little bit and know, like, okay, let's start putting some money in other places so that when I do try to do this, I will have a little bit of runway. Is that the proper term? Do people say a runway to kind of get started? Because a lot of people, they're like, I could never start a business. I have no money. I'm like, okay, well, do you ever think about like, hey, maybe I should put money away so I can start a business one day?
Yeah.
Did you do that at all?
No,
well, you're good with
honestly,
money anyways, so you probably just kind of had some away anyways.
Yeah, when I don't know how, but I just got really lucky when I first got my first job, and I went into the bank and I opened a TFSA, which is very similar to a Roth IRA, but in Canada, and it has a little bit more benefits than a Roth. So I opened that up and I got lucky. I haven't even touched the money, but I was just continually putting that money in there. And then my other accounts are usually just my checking accounts. And I usually just build that up, and I try to have like my $0 isn't actually $0. So it's like when I had my first job, it was like, I just want at least a minimum of $2,000 in my bank account. That's my $0. I don't want to go below 2,000. And then it just kind of builds up over time. When I get other jobs, my $0 is now, X amount. So it just builds up over time.
I actually love that idea, because I do the same thing. Mine is in 2,000. Like right now, I always have to have $1,000 in my checking account, or like I can't sit with myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And every month I get paid into my checking account and into my savings account. But if it ever goes below $1,000, it feels like I'm overdrawing my account. So that's one piece of advice I'd give to people, and especially young people that are going through high school and college. And it might be tougher because you obviously have things to pay for and you don't have a full-time job all the time. But I like how you said that, set your zero amount to an actual higher amount than zero. Even if it's, $200, even if it's $400, $500, that's better than just being, okay, I got $15 in my bank account, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's just raising it incrementally if you do want to go with that approach. Like, I know it can be tough when you're younger, and you might not have a lot of expenses, and you might want to buy new clothes, buy new shoes, and that's something that I never really did as when I was younger. So I was able to build that up. But I think at the same time, if you're doing that and you're slowly incrementally increasing that, it builds habits, because then you're trying to get to $500. And if you're able to get to $500, why can't you get to $1,000? Why can't you get to $2,000? And it's just that snowball effect of those small habits that you're building up. I think it's just going to, build up over time.
I agree. And that's something that you just have to kind of learn about money to do. A lot of people don't even think about that. I keep saying that a lot of people, I need an alternative for that. People don't think about money that way, where they're like, okay, how do I start to build the money in the account, instead of, okay, well, I got $500. Okay, now I got $2,500. Let's get back down to $500. Because I think people set a normal where it's like, okay, I'm normal being around that $500. I can let it go there. I can let it go back down. And then once they get there, they're like, oh my gosh, I got to rush. I got to be frantic. I got to get back up to wherever. And then they're like, okay, now I can ease back down to normal.
Yeah, I think we're talking a little bit about personal banking. I'm curious to know how you work with your business banking, because I know you read the book for
Profit First.
Profit First. There you go. So I don't know if you do have that same mentality, or is it different, or how do you, because you typically don't have that paycheck coming in like every week or 2 weeks. I know that I have this paycheck coming in and I know how much it is. I know consistently, But with a business, it's a lot different than that because, some weeks you might get nothing, some weeks you might get a lot, and then, it fluctuates.
Yeah, so I'm going to get maybe into a little bit of a rant here because there's a couple different facets to talk about with this, but I've started 2 businesses in my life. The first one was a DBA, so that means doing business as. So that means I had a business account, or no, I didn't have a business account. It was just my personal account. So any money I made selling t-shirts would go directly to my personal account. That's obviously not very advantageous when you're running a business. So even if you are doing like a sole prop, at least have 2 different bank accounts. So then you know what's coming into the business and what's coming into your personal account. Now, I started my second business. The first thing I did when I started the production company was create an LLC. And the LLC, there's a little bit more rules on transferring money to your personal bank account compared to leaving it in the bank account. So I personally tax myself as an S Corp, which we won't get into that too much, but that allows you to pay yourself a W-2 wage. So a W-2 is like something that any employee would have. That's what the employer is paying you. So technically I'm an employee of my company. So before we get into the banking side, I get a paycheck every once a month. You can do 2 weeks. You set it up however you want with your accountant. But switching from paying myself to everything in the business account is my money and I'll do what I want with it, to, okay, now that's the business's money and I'm just getting the same amount of income like I'm an employee, it really changes your mindset. And that was before I read Profit First. So I read Profit First, and then I switched from having one bank account where I just get money taken out of to now every single income, every check, every whatever that comes into the business goes in separate accounts. So the separate accounts are OPEX, which stands for operating expenses. That's pretty much everything comes out of there, from paying myself a salary to the van payment that I have, to any software payments, to any taxes, all of that. So let's say I get a check for $1,000. That will go into the income account. So that's a different account. So $1,000 in the income, 10% will go into the profit account, 15% into the taxes account, 35% into the owner's comp account, and then the rest of it goes into the OPEX account, which is operating expenses. So after I made that transition, which this is probably getting super in-depth for the people that are listening, but I made that transition to make it more of an entity where, okay, the money has places to go, instead of, okay, every dollar that comes into the bank account is mine. Technically it is mine, but to keep the business afloat and growing and make sure you don't overspend the money you have, paying yourself that consistent amount of money really helps. Rant over. Questions?
So did you answer, do you try and have like a $0 amount in your business account?
Yeah. And that's where I try to stay around a certain number. It fluctuates a little more with that because there's sometimes you have clients that pay, okay, 1 month you're going to get, okay, this month I'm getting $15,000. The next month I'm getting 0. So that fluctuates a little bit more than the personal account, because the personal account, I know exactly what I'm getting every single month, just like a regular job. But the business account, it might be, okay, $15,000 this month, $800 the next, $2,000 the next month. So it varies a little bit, but once you kind of get that consistent flow, you know what's coming out of your business account every month, because your expenses should be relatively the same.
Yeah. I feel like for you, maybe I'm completely wrong here, but I feel like you don't buy equipment very often, and then you probably just pay yourself, and then you probably got some other small expenses. So I feel like you got a pretty good idea on your expenses each month.
Yeah, now I do. There was a window from when I bought my house and moved into the home studio to now, or a couple months ago, where I would pay myself out of the business, and then all the excess money, I wasn't really saving a ton of it. I was really investing in the business heavily by buying new equipment, and I purchased a van and bought new cameras, new lenses, all of this new stuff. So I wasn't showing a huge profit, but I knew that mentally. I'm like, okay, I got to invest in the business now while there's a lot of money coming in. And then once I have this good base, everything's ready to go, then I can kind of start to build up that account. So there was a time when, I had excess money over what I was paying myself, but I kind of dumped it into a lot of equipment. And now it's back to normal where it's like, okay, I pay myself. I know exactly what my expenses are for all the softwares, the vans, taxes, all that stuff, and then the excess money on top.
You hear that a lot where, especially just starting out, you got to constantly be reinvesting in your business. And I feel like you've got a good solid base and foundation with all of your equipment there. Do you have more expenses or reinvestments in the future or right now?
I think right now, as far as investing in the business goes, expense wise, I think the amount of equipment and everything on that end is kind of covered. The only thing that I'd really upgrade would be a new camera body. If there's, if I want to start moving into the cinema line or something on that end. And then little trinkets here and there where it's like, okay, it would be make my life easier if I had this tool, but nothing huge where I'm spending, two, three, four, $5,000 on certain items. I think the next step is really investing in people. So that would be my next investment, where it's hiring someone that actually comes on and takes a little bit of the workload off of the everyday activities, rather than investing in new pieces of equipment that just sit on the shelf and can't do things for me.
So I know you have people come on set with you to help out. Do you prefer that, or would you prefer having? I feel like there's benefits to both sides, but
Yeah,
what do you think of that?
I like having people on set, especially a few, just so they can do different jobs. And usually I try to hire them out as much as I can, build that into proposals when I do go to jobs. But I would like someone every day for internal work that doesn't have to do with stuff on set. So there's a lot of social media aspects and script writing and YouTube and just kind of managing all of the stuff that I tend to drop when I'm working with clients. That would be nice to have one, but there are benefits to both. Obviously, you don't have to pay someone on set as much if they're only there for one gig. But yeah, I mean, I think a good mix of both is kind of what I'm looking to hit.
Yeah, I think the investment there, especially just starting out, like getting your first employees, I know that can be tough, finding the right people and just, building that business up. But I think the investment there helps get you your time back. And then, it's a trade-off where you got to pay them a little bit, but then that frees up you to do more higher end tasks to help out the business and progress it.
Yeah, and I think the biggest scare, the biggest worry is people say that you hired so you can focus on the higher end tasks that you're good at. So, okay, generating new business or whatever. But I know I'm really good at videos and editing. Maybe my tasks that I'm supposed to be freeing up, like outbound, generating new leads, maybe I'm not good at that. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, if I hire this person and then they're doing the stuff that I do, and then I have to work on, okay, now I'm sales. Well, what if I suck at sales? Obviously I can work on that, but that's something that goes through my mind. It's like, okay, what if I burn 30 grand hiring this person and then I have time, but I'm not using the time how I should be?
Yeah, I feel like it could be tough to figure out what you need to do, because like you're going to be handing off a lot of stuff and then you're going to be left with, a lot of less stuff. And then then it's just trying to find those higher ticket tasks that you need to be doing. So yeah, I know I struggle with that, because especially with the power list where you got to do your 5 highest priority tasks on the day.
Yep.
Sometimes I struggle with coming up with 5 on what I need to do. And because like, sure, I could do task A, but it's going to take me like 8 hours, and I don't really have 8 extra hours to do it. So I know sometimes it can be tough.
It's a fine line. And I think I'll get to the point of where someone is working for me full time, whether it starts with someone working for me part time or whatever it might be. But I mean, that's probably the next step. As far as investing in Nuevo specifically, is there anything that, any tips or tricks that you would kind of say, because yours is more retail side compared to mine was a service-based business?
Tips and tricks.
Or honestly, things that you did that, to manage finances.
Yeah, we just use an Excel sheet and tried to track everything, and especially the two of us to track our expenses, because our investments were a little bit different, especially at one point it was like varied pretty big. So just being able to track, it gets more confusing once you have more people in it. And then, sometimes there might be stuff that gets dropped along the way. So that's why I think tracking it as much as possible is good, because especially with us, because we spent what I spent compared to what he spent is completely different. And like, we want to be around or approximately the same buy-in because we're both 50-50.
Yeah.
So I think just if you do go into a partnership or more people than just yourself, I think it's good to track everyone's investment. And I know a lot of the times people talk about sweat equity, and sure, you can do that, but then I think you have to understand, if you're doing sweat equity versus someone else doing financial investment, I think you have to understand that they might not be putting in as much time or effort as you will be. And I think that's one struggle that we struggle with, is the sweat equity that we're both putting in and trying to find a balance there, because we're trying to be partnerships here.
And that kind of
So,
goes
and we're
into the
both,
investor side of thing too.
yeah, I feel like I personally, I don't think we're anywhere close to trying to find an investor, but I don't know, maybe we are, and maybe that's what we're lacking. But I think at the same time, it can be, I don't know. I feel like I struggle asking for money. I don't know.
Yeah.
What about you?
Oh, me
I
too,
hate
for
that.
sure. And as far as the investor thing goes, I'm not saying that you'd be ready for an investor, but it's almost, if you're going to partner with someone that, whether it is sweat equity or it is they're fronting more money, when someone does front more money, that's always an option. If you're starting a business and you're like, hey, I'm strapped for cash, maybe you don't have any extra cash laying around to start the company. We were both fortunate enough to have a little bit of money to get the ball rolling, but partnering with someone is not a horrible idea. Just make sure that you are choosing the correct partner, and that okay, if this person's fronting a lot of the money, like you said, they're probably going to be a little bit more hands off. At least it gives me some room to work on the business and put in that sweat equity.
Yeah. I think laying out what everyone's investment is and understanding that is huge. So I think just tracking everything and knowing and understanding what everyone's role and what their effort's going to be is pretty big.
Yeah, and I want to talk about grants and loans a little bit, because I see you got that on the notes here. So I've taken out one, I don't know what you'd call it, I guess, a grant/loan, but it was during COVID, they were giving out businesses money, and there was a $10,000 loan. I guess it was a loan that you don't have to pay back for 30 months. So what's that? 2.5 years?
Something like that.
So that was $10,000, 2.5 years, and it's over you can pay it off over 30 years. So I decided to take that out, and that was another thing that I invested in my business by taking that 10 grand. 2 years from now, I'm going to have to start making payments on it, but I think the payments are $40 a month. If I have to make a $40 payment for the next 30 years, really no skin off my nose, because I have enough streaming services and stuff where I just kind of look at it as that $40 a month, whatever. I think I'm obviously losing a lot of money in interest, but me personally, taking that really helped me advance my business, because it allowed me to buy a new camera. I needed a new camera. I got the Dana Dolly. I invested in more equipment, and just showing up on set with all that stuff really helps. So that's my only experience with a grant or loan. Have you had any experiences with that?
I think doing that and then being willing to have that grant or loan and then buying the equipment, it eliminates a lot of those excuses, because and it also helps propel your business as well, because hopefully what you buy is going to generate more business, which is basically going to pay for itself and some. So it's, you're taking out a loan, you have to pay maybe like, I don't know, 4% on it. And then maybe that loan and the equipment that you paid with it, maybe it's generating you like 10% more or whatever, 15% more. So you're basically getting a net positive over there. But for me, I was in the process of trying to start a business with a few people, and it wasn't my idea. I got brought on, and I'm trying to phrase this well,
Properly.
politely.
Yes.
They didn't want to invest money into it, and they only wanted to go with grants and didn't want to have any loans. So it was months trying to find money, and it was, we're sitting there not doing anything. And I think this is part of my story. It comes back to those excuses where you went out, you bought your camera, you bought your mic, whatever else you needed to do those other ventures. And with us, we had all this stuff prepped, ready, and
Mm-hmm.
we just were missing the money, and we didn't want to invest any of our
Have
own money,
personal
and
debt, yeah.
we just wanted grants. And like, maybe if we stuck with it long enough, maybe we could have got some grants, but maybe it wasn't enough, and then we'd have to resort to our personal funds. And would that have happened? I'm not sure. So I think going with that grant or loan, it's good, but at the same time, if you're like trying to find it and you're not able to find it, you know, there's a
Yeah.
lot of excuses that can get caught in the way, and money's obviously a big aspect of it. So
I think you have to look at investments into businesses like that. And you brought up, me purchasing the equipment so I could get the bigger jobs for the video production. You have to look at it as you're spending X amount of dollars. How much money is that going to bring you on the back end? So if I spend $1,000 on a microphone and a recorder and a new lens, is that going to in turn bring me $1,000 in new jobs or allow me to get on the bigger jobs, which I can maybe charge $1,000 more? That's how I look at it. So if you, I don't know exactly what the business is that you're describing, but let's say, everyone in there put $1,000 together. Is that, let's say there's 4 people, is that $4,000? How long is it going to take you to make the $4,000 back? You know what I mean?
yeah, for sure. I think that's just one thing that we struggled with. That was basically my only experience. Oh, and student loans, fuck those. But
Can't go bankrupt.
yeah, that's my
baby.
only that's my only experience with grants.
I think that if you're starting a business, try to keep it as lean as possible, but don't be afraid to invest in your business. That's kind of what I was getting at, is that it's going to take a little bit of the saying it takes money to make money. It's somewhat
Yeah.
true. You don't need $1 million, but, throw a little bit of money at it so you can at least get the ball rolling.
Yeah, especially for us, that business, we were looking, it probably would have been a pretty hefty startup investment, but there are several businesses out there that you can start fairly lean. There's a book called $100 Startup. I think that's a pretty good book to read if you're trying to start as lean as possible. But I know there's also a lot of other businesses that take a lot of upfront startup capital that you might need or to pay for, people or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and we're talking about businesses that we're kind of starting in our garages, in our basements, we're not talking about the Silicon Valley where they need startup funds and they need to go to Y Combinator and get $35 million. That's not what this
Slight
podcast
work.
is for, because they have real mentors that are billionaires that are helping them, where we are thousandaires helping you guys. I'm gonna put that in my bio. Thousandaire. One of the world's thousandaires.
One of the few.
Yeah.
One of the few, one of the many.
The few, the proud, the Marines. The few, the proud, the thousandaires. But other than that, I mean, that's kind of all the notes I have on this. Might be a little bit shorter of an episode, but is there anything else you want to touch on as far as finances go in businesses? And I suppose we kind of went off topic a little bit. So, more finances, investments, kind of dealing with money, all that.
Yeah, I think it can be extremely easy to blow through money, especially when it starts coming in to your bank account and you start making money and might not know where to put the money. One really good piece of advice is, if you get a lot of money and you don't know what to do with it, don't spend it. Just sit there and wait till you do know what you want to do with it. I think, that was something that was really good, because it was like, should I go and buy real estate? Should I go and do this? Should I go and do X? It's like, if you don't know what you want to do with it, I think it's just sit on it and figure out what you do want to go with it, and don't rush into anything. And, especially just like starting out, if you don't have like the capital, just start out small and slowly build your way up, build those habits, and, try and be lean.
Yeah, that's something that now that you bring that up, I think about. I went through that when I first started seeing some success in my business. And I'm like, wow, I'm getting a lot of money coming in here. Like, I never made this much money in my life. I've only been a bag boy at a golf course before. So I was seeing all this money come in, and I just use that as an opportunity. Oh, I can buy whatever I want now. And now that I'm more mature in my business, I've realized, and now that I've lost a couple jobs, that like obviously business happens where there's going to be highs and there's going to be lows. It's don't get too high on your highs and don't get too low on your lows. And that's kind of the same with money. If you have a lot of money, don't be afraid to just sit on it, like you said, because there's going to be a time where a client fires you or you lose X amount of dollars because of whatever scenario. It's happened to me. Literally, we have a podcast episode we're going to talk about it, losing $70,000 in 11 minutes. But don't be afraid to just sit on that money, because losing, you never know what might come up in business where you're like, okay, now at least I have this nest egg to kind of sit on. You always want to have that runway of, that's another thing we could talk about too. It's kind of building up that runway of, I think a lot of people say 6 months of, if you didn't get a client or you didn't get a sale for 6 months, would you be able to survive? So that's something I think a lot of business owners should strive for.
Those rainy day funds. I think, a lot of people talk about that. It's not bad to sit on cash. Like, a lot of people make it seem like cash is a bad thing, like to be sitting on, like you want to be investing it. But I think at the same time, just having that backup and safety net, like, it helps you sleep at night a little bit.
Yeah. And I think when people say that they should be talking about people that have, you don't want $1 million in your Gate City checking account. But, if you have $50,000, that's okay. You don't need to be like, okay, I need to go invest 40 of it, if that makes sense. So
you never know when an investment or something that will come up will happen. So,
well, exactly. And that's where it's, and I love that point, actually. It's not, don't be afraid to sit on cash. There's the quote of the day. We should start having quotes of the episode.
All right. That's perfect.
My chair is made out of cash. I'm just sitting on it.
I feel like it also depends on who you ask, because I feel like if you ask Elon Musk is probably like, I don't want cash. And like, he's constantly, but I think that's the difference with him. He has something to invest it in, where he has like this massive, he has like 5 companies. Yeah. He has somewhere to put it. He has somewhere like that probably needs the investment. So I feel like for him, I honestly don't think he has much cash. I think it's just all in the businesses. He's like, if Tesla were to go bankrupt, I'd have nothing.
Yeah. And that's where businesses on the smaller scale, like mine and yours, it's better because there's still some uncertainty. The uncertainty with these big corporations, if we're using Elon Musk as an example, the uncertainty of Tesla going bankrupt compared to a mom and pop shop in Minot, North Dakota going bankrupt, one of them is going to happen before the other, I would say. So, I mean, he has a little bit more wiggle room, I think, because he has a multi-billion-dollar company. But if you are starting that company and you're in the, 5 to 6 figure range, it's not a horrible thing to sit on cash, because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, he also has like so many, like he's built up such a big reputation for himself. Whereas if something ever does happen, he probably has a whole list of people that he can go to and be like, hey, I need a couple mil. And then they'll be like, okay, no problem. Just because he's the smartest person alive right now. It's like, why would you not bet on him? Anyone would be willing to bet on him.
Hey, bet the horse that's supposed to win, right?
There you go.
Till the last one comes up the rear. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what time we're at here, but is there anything else you can think of before we call it an episode?
I'm pretty sure that's it.
Sweet.
That's all I got.
Is this episode 4? I think it's episode 4.
Sorry for interrupting you.
No, you're good.
This is 5th episode.
That's episode 5, The Midnight Entrepreneur. If you have any questions you'd like us to cover or answer, you can email us at themidnightentrepreneur@gmail.com. If you found value in this content or found this entertaining, share this with a friend or post it on your story. If you really enjoyed the show, we'd love a rating and review on wherever you're listening. Talk to you guys next week for another episode of The Midnight Entrepreneur.